Yeah, at this point, I want to stress myself out as much as possible and pretty much like pressure myself out because that's going to increase my performance.
It's the first day of week 9 of the NALCS with coverage presented by OmniSlash. I'm joined right now by MikeYeung following TSM's guaranteed entrance into the playoffs. They did it a little shaky at points of the split, Mike. How confident were you that you were going to make playoffs this whole split?
Pretty much, for me, I didn't really have to like think about not making playoffs because in the back of my mind, I knew that my players and my teammates were good enough to be playoff material. So it was really onto me, and the pressure was onto me to just perform.
Whenever we do these interviews, you are so like, you seem like so zen, but I assume there is a lot of pressure on you. A lot of people flaming you over the course of the split and betting on you, and as you just said, you felt like it was on you to make sure that TSM could make it to playoffs. Did that get you at any point in time, or are you just like, oh man, I need this to stop?
Yeah, that's a good point because this week was probably the hardest week for me personally because I was overworking myself for the previous like Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. Because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself and that you know hurt my mental resilience or something. I started feeling lightheaded during scrims like on Wednesday, Thursday, I started getting headaches because I was putting a lot of stress on myself. Like if I were to make a mistake on scrims, I would really stress out on it. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, actually, I think it's a good thing because that's just, if I stress on like a really big mistake, then I won't make it again. So even if we lose scrims, then I won't make the same mistakes on stage.
Generally speaking, headaches are a bad thing. You probably don't want. I don't know if you want to get to the headache stage. I would say, but that kind of you feel like the stress was kind of helping you.
Yeah, at this point, I want to stress myself out as much as possible and pretty much like pressure myself out because that's going to increase my performance. But it does take a toll on the body, on my mental resilience, and my mental health. So I just have to do active and passive recovery, which is something that Weldon taught me. And pretty much I'm gonna start going to the gym finally, and I'm gonna eat healthier too. So that's gonna help a lot.
Are you gonna go with Mr. Rallis? Because everyone LCS is this weird thing where like everybody just plays like spot Mr. Rallis at the gym. I feel like people are constantly tweeting about seeing him there and all that stuff.
I think I'm gonna start just going by myself. Maybe get a trainer because I don't know what to do.
Okay. So, I mean, you have to be careful, though, that you don't burn yourself out ahead of playoffs, right? Like, if you're putting all of it into this weekend, is that something that you're working with Weldon on?
Yeah, I'm definitely working on that for next week. Since I'm new to, like, this type of playoff situation where it's like a marathon, right?
Yeah.
It's not just 1 week, it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So I have to make sure that I'm adjusting my time well and just practice without, putting too much strain on myself for quarterfinals so I can practice for semifinals and then finals.
Okay.
Yep.
And how do you feel TSM's developing over the course of the split? Because it seems like you guys are finishing pretty strong.
Yeah, I think we're finishing strong because we have a really high skill ceiling, and that's because all our players are really talented and hardworking. So if we see, like, we make this mistake, we'll always say we can do better because we have really high expectations for ourselves. So that's the case.
Yeah. And how do you kind of feel about? I do feel like the narrative has changed because the last time I interviewed you, a lot of people were kind of ragging on you a little bit and like, why is this guy here? Now it feels like a lot of more people have accepted you. They feel like you've sort of come into your own. You're feeling more comfortable on TSM. Do you kind of agree with that arc, that story arc, as it is?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure yet. It's hasn't really come to my realization. I think it's going to really be more like I'll be more aware of it after my first spring split. So it's still not done yet. We still haven't played playoffs. So once we play the playoffs, then I'll have a good idea of if the fans have mostly accepted me or some people or most people still are questioning it.
How do you feel about the meta headed into playoffs?
I don't think much has changed. I don't think so.
But I mean, are you happy with the way it is? Like, because the reason I ask is because at the start of the year, I talked to several different players who were like really frustrated with the way the game was being played and sort of, like I don't know, a bunch of random stuff like unsealed spellbook, etc. What is your take on everything as we're heading into the playoff side?
Well, jungle, I think, is the exact same. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. And so I think that's a good thing that the playoffs isn't different, because if there's a different patch, then every team has to learn everything over again, especially with 1 week left to go until playoffs. So I think it's good that everything's still the same, although personally for me, playing tanks every game gets a little bit boring.
Yeah. Very good. Everything else going well with the teammates? Any interesting stories? You get to hang out with those guys a lot?
Oh, I saw this thing on, I don't know, this is just a random thing that I thought of in my mind while doing this interview.
Okay.
Is on Reddit, people say that I'm really different in interviews than legends or on Twitter or whatever. And I don't know, and I'm kind of like this. I don't know who the MikeYeung really is, or what he really thinks inside. Well, I think I'm kind of learning more about myself too. So I honestly don't know exactly what my personality is. I'm sure I'll figure that out as I grow.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know if I'm a funny guy. I don't think my humor is pretty good, but I think I'm pretty straightforward, serious. Maybe I'm trying to be a little bit too mature.
Yeah. I mean, I remember whenever Biofrost joined TSM, compared to when he left, he was a very different person. So maybe TSM just sort of, like, people go in there and it's just like a personality vortex. You don't know what's going to happen after a couple years on TSM.
Yeah, it's something that Weldon told me. I know I keep on saying Weldon told me this, but we talk a lot after scrims. Like, I have Skype calls with him, and he tells me a lot. And what he was talking about is when you're playing, like, performance sports, it's like a whole different scenario. It's like a once in a lifetime chance to really experience something different, and that can be like enhancing your understanding of life. So like for a lot of pro athletes, like it's life or death for them. There are a lot of life or death situations, and when you lose, it triggers like the same chemical in your brain that's equal to grieving, like when you lose a family member. And so I think that these experiences will just make me a better person in the future, because I can't get any of these experiences, all these stressful like situations. It's like moving past for that and figuring out coping mechanisms and stuff like that. I can't find that anywhere else. So that's why I chose to be a pro gamer. This was a one in a lifetime opportunity. So sorry for rambling too.
I appreciate it.
I also ramble a lot in interviews. Like, I talk a little bit too much. Like, some person asks me a question, and then I'll talk a lot and I'll ramble, and I'll say and. And yeah, I need to work on that. I need to work on my speech.
Listen, the thing that drives me crazy is when I interview pro players, and I'm like, so, how did that game go? Good. I mean, we played okay. And I'm like, okay, what do you think of how things are developing in the LCS? And they're like, I think it's going to expect, I'd much rather have somebody who like elaborates on their thoughts and kind of goes on than have somebody who gives such short answers. But I do appreciate, this has been kind of a fun interview, because it's interesting to hear your perspective on kind of like how the LCS is impacting you as a person and your life, because I think a lot of the pro players go through kind of a crazy world as they enter the LCS, and so, but not as many of them talk about it. So it's really nice of you to be so transparent and open about it. Is there anything that you want to say to any of the fans out there?
Thank you for my fans that have supported me, that think about me, and I enjoy all your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, MikeYeung, so much for the interview. And for everyone else, you can check out the rest of my coverage of all things esports right here on my YouTube channel.
Hey, so Travis doesn't check any of these. He just uploads whatever I put in the folder for him. So I figured now's probably a good time to plug my my Twitter, my Instagram. Once again, how to spell BRODIN PLETT, Broden Plett. Pretty easy to find me. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one. But yeah, this content's brought to you by OmniSlash.